I'm Tiana.
And I'm Trav.
And this is I Now Pronounce You,
where we reflect on our experiences and give our opinions.
It can be hard to take the time to process it all.
So we're making the time now.
We welcome you to
I Now Pronounce You. Hey, 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 okay. Yeah.
Welcome back.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tiana.
And I'm Trav.
And this is another episode 24 of I Now Pronounce You.
Oh, yeah.
So, how's life, Trav?
No complaints at all, baby. Everything is gravy.
Oh, no usually every week you'd be like, just work, man. I'm tired and
No, it's been a great week.
A lot's been happening in virtual learning. You all right?
Yeah, everything's gravy.
Oh, that's good.
What about you?
I'm doing pretty well. This past weekend was Halloween.
Hallows Eve.
And, with it being 2020, things definitely looked, different this year. I don't always take the kids trick-or-treating. It's not always my jam. Sometimes it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't live in an area where you can walk door to door because the homes are pretty spread out.
Yeah.
So, we usually have to drive them somewhere and kind of do the trick-or-treating thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't too odd of an aspect for Halloween for us this year. But we got into a DIY project.
Oh, yeah. And that was fun.
That was fun. We made a fire pit out of cinder blocks and like these toppers.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to roast marshmallows with the kids and, some of their god siblings and cousins. And it was a pretty dope moment, just kind of having everybody together outside and doing something that felt like it was bringing everybody together.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed myself.
Well, you always loved being Uncle Trev.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe from years of watching programming like Uncle Phil and Uncle Buck, You want to be the cool uncle. My
cousins were like, Trev, you going to tell ghost stories? And what did you kept saying?
Tell you about the one time I couldn't pay the mortgage.
That was his ghost story. It was
really real.
Next year, we are really going to have to tell. If we can't think of our own, then we can get a book and kind of read a ghost story out of it for the kids. I think that would be really dope.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I didn't think about it until just now that I could have Googled kid ghost stories and read it aloud,
Yeah. But we'll be better prepared next year.
We sure will.
We kind of, winged it like everyone's been doing in 2020.
Yeah, we did.
So yeah, we'll kind of do that. But I thought the DIY project was pretty dope. And when we were moving the cinder blocks, or cement blocks, concrete blocks, whatever you call them, all the same. When we were moving them, all I could think about was that Michael Jackson movie. The Jackson, what was it?
Oh, the story of the Jackson 5 on VH1?
Yeah, but I forget the name of it right now. I don't know why I want to say Jackson Family Values.
That's the Tony Braxton
film. I know. I don't know why I want to say that.
I wanted to say the same thing. No.
But he, one of Joe Jackson's tactics for his boys to keep them out of trouble was they had to move these concrete blocks from one side of the yard to the other, while people were into gang activity and doing other things and getting into trouble. This was their after-school activity.
Yeah.
It's going to build strength. It's going to give you something to do. And even though people might have thought it was a little crazy, like, I kind of get it.
Mm-hmm. Especially, where they were and where they lived in that area. Anything to keep those kids busy. And
later in our conversation, concrete blocks are going to come up again. So I'm going to make it full circle there. So what kind of piqued my interest this week was there is this segment. I want to say that it's aligned with Black Love. I'm not positive, but Dondre Whitfield, who is an actor, he played on The Cosby Show when he was younger. He played on soap operas. He played in a lot of movies in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially those type of cult classics and hits. And him and his wife also appeared on Black Love, the documentary, a few seasons back, and I'm really interested in those conversations, as I've mentioned before. But he has his own thing. He came up with a book called Male versus Man. And the book is about how to honor women, and he calls out men for things that they do that may be problematic, or he's giving an explanation behind why some men do the things they do, and how it's they need to realize, that yes, you are born a male, but that does not make you a man, and that you must.
Interesting.
Yeah, I want to read the book. As soon as I finish Becoming, I want to read. I got Common's book. I would like to read. Your mom gifted it to you, but most of the time when people gift you books, I like to read them. So I want to read that. I want to read Dondre's book as well. And what piqued my interest with his book is that he has these clips that are posted on blacklove.com and on YouTube called Male versus Man, where he talks to different men. Sometimes he talks to couples, and he kind of dissects some of his ideas. So I was watching where he actually had a conversation with the Campbells, Erica and Warren Campbell.
Yeah.
And Warren, I thought, made a really good point where he was talking about how some men, or many men, don't know how to deal with their anger issues, because a lot of them were raised by single mothers, and they saw how their mothers dealt with their emotions, and they imitated that.
Yeah.
And he said that he grew up like in gang culture, but in his neighborhood, he was the only one that actually did have a father. And so he could recognize that in his peers, that they were acting out in a way that sometimes women who are emotional in certain moments and they kind of reel it back in, but those men were acting that way explosively and turning on each other without realizing that they just didn't have a male figure to show and model how they should handle different situations.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel about those statements?
No, I would agree. I think that, it's a overall problem, the absence of the black father in the last 2 to 3 decades, actually. And, if you didn't have that male influence like a grandfather or an uncle, then you did respond to things explosively. And the reason that they probably are responding that way is because the mother is usually in a household with a tumultuous amount of stress on her shoulders. And so she naturally is explosive because she may be tired or she may be stressed. So some of the smallest things may cause outbursts. And, a child is usually raised by what they see, not so much as, what they're taught. And a young man who's raised by a woman with a lot of stress on her shoulders and a lot of pressure, she's going to be explosive. And I could see that, how that happens.
How do you think that we can make that transition between that irrational acting out or responding, even if there's not a male in the household? Like, how do we fix that in our communities?
That's the question that we've been battling with for the last 3 decades. Yeah,
but I'm interested to kind of hear, like, our last conversation about SARS and police brutality. I kind of gave my approach on solution-based thinking and some ideas around that. As a black man, what are some of your solution-based things? Because we can't put a father in every home.
We can't, but usually the guys that step in are usually involved in some sort of, activity. So that's why you see a lot of single mothers put their kids in team sports, where that coach or the coaching staff acts as father figures. You may get your kid to play an instrument, and, that person, if they are a male, becomes that figure. So mainly the solution that I've always seen is putting them in some sort of organized sports. Usually in the black community, it's usually basketball and football.
What if you're not interested in that?
Yeah, then you have to put them in something that has a male figure. You know what I mean? A lot of black males I noticed, too, that didn't have a lot of male figures. It happened later on in life. Somebody has to get them to that point. But, fraternities and things like that, that brotherhood, having older brothers and things like that in your fraternity can definitely help. Also too, there's a lot of mentoring programs, but a lot of people think that's kind of corny. So, there were generations of guys at some point, and I can't speak for every neighborhood, but in those lower income areas, there were guys that were involved in illegal activity that kind of watched over that one that they thought had potential, and they would just the community would just come together. So, I mean, there's a few that fall through the cracks, of course, but I think that, the black community is making an effort, and, awareness is always a step. And I know that when I meet younger guys, I try to address them, like a grown man that they want to replicate. And I take responsibility for, if I have younger family members, I want to lead by example, and that's my small contribution to the bigger problem.
I think that's important. Like, if you are, in a family where you have, sisters, brothers, not brothers, but sisters, aunts, family friends that are, single parents, like trying to, engage their children, both girls and boys, but trying to engage those boys to, hang out with you, or to, take a ride to the store, or, come over for a game or something like that, just so that they can be around a male and see how they act, see how, they are in that regard, because, the people that are in your homes are your models for starting out. So you really do need that. And that kind of brings me to something else that Dondre and Warren had mentioned, and I saw myself in Erica when she watched the expression of that. So, they were talking about child rearing, and I hear more and more men talk about the way that they raise their sons. And Warren called it warrior training. T.D. Jakes called training boys to be men. And
raising young kings,
all of those things. And they basically are checking their sons. And I know you do it with Ty. I see it quite often. And Erica, of course, like, her eyes went up and she looked away to the corner. And, Dondre was laughing, and he told her, he said, "I'm laughing because you look like my wife right now." She doesn't like when I have to do it. And Warren said the same thing. But Warren said something that I thought was very key. He says that he does it away from his wife. So he will take his son out to go play basketball, or he'll take him on a drive to go get him some shoes or something. And or pick him up from school. He uses those opportunities to check him, not in the presence of his wife, because he doesn't want that interference.
Yeah, and that's also something that I think that I'm sorry to cut you off, honey.
No, I was just going to say, can you speak about that?
Yeah, I think that it's difficult, especially being a black man. We know that, I don't know, there's like a cliche thing that you have to work twice as hard as your counterparts, right? So there's a level of discipline that is also, it's almost like a double-edged sword. So you have to train them very early to be able to have business acumen and to be able to move through the world and be aware. You also have to train them to be able to take care of a family and protect a family. But you also have to still have sort of this edge, right? So black women always have this way of, at least the ones that I've seen like online, they always say, well, I want a smart man that takes care of his family, but I want him to have a little edge to him. I want him to have a little oomph to him. And sometimes men can be engulfed in that, based on our testosterone, but we still have to find a balance. And that balance is learned. It's not something that you're born with. And we just train our sons. We want them to be better than we were. So we want to start early. We think about all of our imperfections, and, our sons are nothing but us, 2.0. So we just have to try to teach them some of the things that are pitfalls and just, train them up the right way. But the wives never love to see it. I mean, you check a young man, and because you got to do it, man. Because if I don't check him, somebody on the world that don't know my son is going to check him, and you don't know if they'll be as forgiving,
I just think it's always, not saying that you take this approach, but in general, I think there's a fine line between, doing something with purpose and doing something damaging with a so-called good intent. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like trauma can be like this very thin line that we are bordering on. And
it's a delicate balance.
It is a delicate balance. And I just want us to keep that in mind. But when Erica was, making those faces, and she said, that's my baby. And Warren said, but you want him to flip the switch and be somebody's man.
Exactly.
And he said that happens over time. That doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly.
So
Warren was on fire, man.
So he had, yeah. That's why if you didn't see
I'm
me.
still my mama's baby, but she also knows that if there's a situation where she needs advice or protection or to be led by a man, she can still come to me with that advice because I found that balance,
If you didn't see me when I was listening to their conversation, I was like, woo, like on the couch, like so many spots in the conversation, though it was short, just reminded me of conversations that we have had or things that we've talked about. And it's really comforting and good to know that other people are having these same types of conversations. Now, I don't feel that he needs to be coddled. If he is wrong, and I will stand by that. But I do like the idea or the notion of, pulling him aside and handling that situation, because sometimes he will look over at me and, my job as the mother is different than your role as the father. And I thought it was interesting that, Warren said, spanking is so close to slavery, so he doesn't do it.
We don't either, in this household,
He gave this situation where he says, and this is my kids know, I don't like a liar. Like, lying is like one of the worst things. It is the worst thing that you can do in this household to me.
You can break trust, yeah.
Yeah, and so he gave the situation where his rule in his house is you must wear socks with your shoes, right? Mm-hmm. That's not what he got upset about. His son, he picked his son up from school. He took him to the store to get some new shoes because he was like, oh, man, your shoes looking rough. Let's go get you another pair.
Yeah.
So he took him to the shoe store, and when they went to go try on the shoes, he asked his son, he's like, oh, hey, bud, where's your socks at? And he was like, oh, I took them off at school. And he was like,
get them out of your book
oh,
bag.
then where are they at? Oh, they're in my book bag. So he was like, oh, let's go get them. And Warren said he knew the entire time that he's lying. He didn't wear socks this morning, but he wanted to follow this lie out. And I do this with my kids too. So he wanted to follow this lie out. So he went to the truck and, the son's looking through the book bag. Oh, you know what, Dad? I must have left the socks at school. So what was Warren's next move?
Well, let's go ahead back to the school. It's not far away.
Let me call the school and see if they see it. And when he pulled out that phone, his son started crying and was like, I'm sorry, Dad. I lied to you. I didn't wear them this morning. And so Warren was like, huh. So he said, now I had to, come up with a punishment in a sense to make him, remember and know that you don't lie to your father. You don't lie to people. So he took him home, and guess what he made him do, babe?
What?
Stack cinder blocks from one side of the backyard to the other.
Oh.
And then in the midst of him doing that, he had to do 10 push-ups and then do the next set, move it across the yard, then do 10 push-ups. And he said he made him do it till his arms felt like noodles. And he was like, I bet you won't lie to me again.
I do that with Tyson. I will grab something that's semi-heavy, but heavy enough that it's going to hurt his arms a little bit, and I make him hold it above his head until I tell him to stop, or until them little frail little arms go.
So when I heard it, I was like, "That's the Joe Jackson." Like, Joe Jackson strikes again.
Maybe Joe wasn't that crazy, man. Look at what he was able to pull out of his kids. Yes, there was some trauma involved, and that ideal needs to be refined. But
yeah,
I think he meant well.
Yeah.
I think he loved his sons. I just think that when you have been raised a certain way and you're trying to do what you think is right, you have to just relearn different methods. I grew up in a household where spanking was the move.
It was in my household too.
And I just saw the after effects of it. And, it just, I'm smart enough to figure out other ways to, reprimand my kids other than, being traumatized hearing a belt jingling down the hallway.
But it's also the move of our generation, I feel like, as well.
And it's amazing that, when we talk about it, everybody is kind of on the same page, but without like it being like a
Yeah.
unspoken movement thing. It was just like, I'm not about to do that. Like, and then we're also a very aware generation of, we try to separate as far as we can from slavery, so it's one of those things that are tacked on, and it just seems uncivilized, and it was something that we needed to change anyway. So I'm all for it.
When I was listening to that part of the conversation, there's so many parts that I connected with. But Dondre said, "No king is built in comfort," and
Trial by fire.
yeah. And I was like, okay, all right, I see you, Trev.
I'm telling you, man.
I see you, Trev, and I do understand it. And even though it may be, a hard pill to swallow sometimes, I do understand what you mean by it. But on the other side of things, babe, when I reprimand Tamara or if I check her, you are like, did you have to say that? Or she didn't do it, baby. Or, do you know what I'm saying? You step in for her. You do.
And I'm learning my place now too. Because it's the same way. You're teaching her how to be a young woman in this thriving environment, and we both need to, take our roles and as support roles of our responsibility. I can't teach Tamara how to be the best woman that she can be. Only you can do that, and vice versa with my son. So,
and I'm telling you, like, I know Ty's young right now, but Tamara's 12, and it's nothing like hearing people that do not know her tell you the things that you wanted to instill in her.
Exactly.
There's nothing like that when someone says, oh my God, she's so kind-hearted. And you're like, oh, I wanted that, right? Or she's honest. Or, she's a hard worker. Or, she has great character. And it's like, oh my God. Like, those are the things that you wanted to instill and you hoped to instill. And to see it actually come to fruition, it's like, all right, I'm doing something right.
Yeah, we're grooming leaders.
Yeah.
People that can think for themselves and that can thrive in the world. What we're pretty much training them to be is someone who can survive without us.
Yeah.
And especially, with my son, I know one day I'm gonna get old, and I need a guy that's going to be able to, if something happens to me, care for his mother, care for his sister, protect them, be the voice of the family if a man's opinion is needed. I need him to be me times 100, and I don't put that pressure on him, but I am grooming him to be that.
I like looking at the family dynamic and seeing how each relationship is important. Like the mother-son relationship is important. The mother-daughter, the father-son, the father-daughter, relationships with grandparents, with siblings, like all of those are very important and really make up the child and make up their self-esteem and make up all these different aspects of them. And I see the family dynamic being just studied and looked at in a way that, we haven't really done before, especially when it comes to the son and daughter aspect, because, we always groom the daughters to be, the homemakers and, the ones that were more reserved and that kind of catered to the man, and those cycles are being broken.
Absolutely.
More and more. But I think when you start thinking about men and their daughters, there's still sometimes this old-fashioned thing that comes up. What do you always hear men say as their daughters get older?
You want to protect them from boys.
Yeah. So you're always talking about, what I'm saying, I got the shotgun waiting for when your dates step up on it. Even though I know you're exaggerating, but
am I going to ice grill him? Absolutely. I want to know how you want to examine how a young man thinks.
But will you do that with your son?
Oh yeah. Because I've had experiences with some unsavory women of my lifetime, and if I had
unsavory,
sorry, I'm an old man at heart.
It's okay, baby. I love you.
If if I had a pops, I'd be like, hey, I hate to use derogatory terms, but things like, she looks like she might be chasing money, or she may be chasing your potential, or she looks like you're probably not the only person that they're dealing with, or I don't like that. You have to match the energy a little bit.
You do, because there's different ways of handling the situation, and it depends on the age, right? Like,
Yeah.
if they're in their 20s, you're going to address the conversation differently than when they're, 14 and 15. During this part of the conversation, Warren was talking about how he lets his daughter is 15, and he lets her know, like, you know what boys want, right? And he was like, she gets uncomfortable, but he doesn't hold any cut cards because he wants her to know at this age, they after that. You know what I'm saying? And I want you to keep that in the forefront. Because he said you also have to, Erica was saying how you have to know your child. So she said her younger daughter, she probably not going for it, just the way her personality is. But her 15-year-old just sees, like, the good in everybody and is very naive. And so daddy has to pretty much tell her what it is so that it's in the forefront of her mind. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it was interesting when Dondre said he also has a 15-year-old, and he said she asked, Daddy, when can I date? And he said instead of saying some old school response, like, he said he really wanted to say, oh, when you're dead, is what he said. It's what he wanted to say.
Yeah.
He was like, but instead he was like, okay, how can I approach the situation? So he told her, he said, you know what, honey? Dating is a responsibility. You are responsible to those people, and you have to put time and energy into those people, into those relationships. And he said, and I hear you complain about how you don't want to you don't have enough time to practice the piano. You don't have enough time to put in for whatever sport you're playing or whatever, activity that you have or you're studying. He said, so if you can't find time to devote to those things, how are you going to be able to feed a relationship? And he said he was proud of himself, like, in that moment, that he was able to take that route other than, like, you can date when you dead type of situation. He took that moment to educate and pour in. And he said he's trying to do that with almost every conversation they have.
Yeah, have an approach and explain your reasoning,
But
I like that.
I think it's important of what your parents say, right? Like, anytime there's a situation, I try to put some education and some life experience into my response, because I feel like I crave that at a young age. Like, my mom wouldn't really talk too much about her experiences as a young person. And when you're a kid, you just think, oh, your parents been old forever, right?
Right.
But I had aunts that would tell stories about, their first time or their crushes or their different experiences growing up. And it made me understand, like, oh, they have feelings like how I have feelings, or they've been in situations like I've been in situations, and they're actually giving me some nuggets about how to navigate those situations. They're not telling me, no, just don't do that. They are, giving me some wisdom that I can use and I can keep in my mind. Even if I've been like, oh, I'm not doing that, or I'm not saying that, or I was taking in what they were saying and I was interested in it. And so I try to do that when different situations arise, like in my own household. So kind of to segue, Erica said that when it was time for her, to date, her father took a totally different approach. So she said when she was little, she would come home from school and say, oh, I got a boyfriend. And instead of her dad saying, you ain't got no boyfriend, or you're too young, or whatever, he would just say, oh, really? And that would allow her to open up and share more. So then she would say, oh, yeah. And he goes, well, what makes him your boyfriend? Oh, he pushes me on the tire swing. And so she said every time situations would arise, she would go back and she would tell her father, because he didn't shut her down. So it made her want to talk, and it made her realize that liking a boy wasn't a bad thing, right?
Right.
He was kind of showing what a healthy relationship would look like. So as she got older and she would share, he would say, oh, they shouldn't talk to you like that. They shouldn't do that. And so it was just kind of modeling through conversation and experience of what a healthy relationship would look like.
These are great approaches.
These are great approaches, and I think it's really good to kind of think about. And I'm just telling you, like, just evaluating our practices is just dope. And just people sharing stories is amazing. But she made this statement about how she said daddyless girls make horrible girlfriends and wives. And she said, daddies, girls that were spoiled, rotten, to the point where their dad did everything for them and they saw not one flaw, also make horrible girlfriends and wives. What do you think about that?
That's a very interesting. As you were saying it, I was just thinking about, any past experiences that I may have had. And, or like, someone that I may know in those situations. And I would say that's about 85% accurate.
Why do you think that is? Let's look at the daddy list for a moment. Why do you think daddy list girls...
that vendetta against men, that subconscious, why my dad couldn't stick around for me. So when they see men, well, because you typically tend to date someone like your parents, they may kind of push those emotions off on that person instead of,
you ain't nothing just like my daddy.
Yeah.
You gonna leave me just like my daddy did.
Exactly. As far as the spoiled women, I crack that joke from time to time, but I don't overspoil my baby girl. They just become entitled, so they don't. It's hard for them to be able to give in a relationship because they've been given everything.
And that's what my daddy did. This, my daddy did that. Well, my daddy didn't do it that way. Your daddy. Yeah.
Sometimes, but.
I've had those. Shut up. I've had those moments with you years ago where I would say, "Well, I'm not your mama." You know what I'm saying? I've had some of those moments where it's like you cannot put that burden of what you saw on me because everyone's situation's different, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like your mom may have been able to hold and keep all of these types of things together. And would do it to no end. However, I'm not her, and I'm not in that same situation. Mm-hmm. So those can be things that you admire in her, but you can't expect out of me.
I would say so, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So have you encountered that with me at all?
Yeah. There's, things that happen from time to time. I can tell that, your dad... poured into you a lot, but it's never been overbearing. It's just, you come from a good household. And, it's big shoes to fill, I would say, on my end, because I think your dad's a great guy. But I can tell that you guys had a special relationship because you just expect certain things, you expect certain responses. You always talk about how your dad did the majority of the cooking in the household and how I should be kind of grateful that you take care of most of the meals in here. You always talk about things like that. So it's never been overbearing, I wouldn't say.
How do you think your modeling, because you are Tamara's model, how do you think that will affect her?
My main thing is that I like for the kids to see that no matter what, this lady here is my first priority. I love you guys, but it's me and mama. So we're giving them a good example of what a loving relationship looks like. They see that, we balance the responsibilities in the household. Not one person is doing just one thing, So I think that, like I said, kids learn from observation.
What do you think? So do you think that's what she will maybe later look for in a partner?
Yeah, because she going to say, well, my daddy loved my mama. You can't tell nobody. My daddy ain't love my mama, so you need to love me. Like my daddy loved my mama, and my mama loved him back.
I will say this. I do think that they get that message because, so last week, Tamara went with me to school on Friday, and Thursday and Fridays are Trav's days to have Tyson. Well, actually, as of next week, he will have him every day, period, because I cannot no longer bring him to work with me.
God help me.
So you'll be fine, boo. You got this. So anyway, I was kind of going through this current week's schedule, and I was like, okay, Monday I'm gonna go to work, and Daddy, you and Ty are gonna be home with Daddy. Tuesday is election day. Wednesday I'm gonna be home with y'all, and then I think Thursday and Friday, even though that's really Daddy's day, I'm going to go ahead and take Ty because I can't help Daddy the next week. And so I'm talking this through out loud, in my office, writing it down. And Tamara looks at me and she goes, you must really love that man. And I said, I do. And she was like, I can tell. Because I feel like when we can, we are always thinking about how to lessen the burden for each other.
Yeah.
And
Even
that's love.
Even with the Ty situation, like most men will be like, "No, I gotta work. I can't take the kids with me," And I think, well, not even now in this generation. I think it's a lot of relationships are based on like the balance. And I'm like, T needs those couple of days. She got a job just like me, and we both bring an income in this household. So if she needs me to take the kid, or the kids a couple of days a week, we gonna balance that stress. So I'm stressed out the second half of the week. She's stressed in the first half of the week. But at least we got the weekend.
Yeah.
So.
And so, talking about, boys and girls and raising kids, still in that fashion, Erica asked, Dondre, she said, well, you talk about your son and how you hold him, to a standard, and actually talk about your daughter and how you hold her for a standard and you want her to be able to hold her own in these relationships. Do you have that same, responsibility, that same expectation of your son?
Yeah.
And he paused for a moment and he said, I didn't always, but I do. He said, I do. I'm going to teach monogamy and waiting to my son just like I'm doing to my daughter.
Yeah. Because it's only men that don't come from those households that, want to run through anything with a skirt, So you got to teach them that this is how you prevent having 3 or 4 baby mothers. This is how you prevent putting yourself in a difficult situation of not being there to be a good father. I mean, you're breaking a cycle,
And then, babe, I heard him say something that I did not expect him to say.
What was that?
This man, who's probably in like his late 40s, early 50s, said that he wished he would have waited for his wife.
Wow, that's an interesting. He didn't care about sowing his royal oats. Yeah.
And then Warren agreed, but I'm going to tell you why in a moment. But no, he didn't care about sowing his royal oats because he said, did I say it wrong? Sowing
your royal oats.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say soiling, but
Go ahead.
He said he did not care about sowing his royal oats because it is a false sense of masculinity.
That's an interesting topic. I mean, yeah, but that's also a narrative that we need that's slowly changing as well. We black men now, we want families, we want a wife, and what we call the other ones, the ones that's for the streets, we leave them there,
And Warren called it a sexual Rolodex. He said that he wishes that he didn't have people to compare to his wife. Like, he said even though he doesn't remember those experiences, like how it actually felt, in his mind, he has a sexual Rolodex, a sexual inventory that he wished he did not have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
What do you think about that? Because, I mean, everyone's expectation is different. Do you feel that it is needed to,
I mean,
spread yourself thin? Do you?
I mean, I think that there should be at least more than one sexual experience in a person's lifetime.
Why?
Because if you don't know what you're doing and you mess around and you get married, and y'all have to work through that thing together, the sex is going to be pretty bad for a while, until you guys learn each other. And, I mean, it all depends on what your preference is,
I saw a couple talk about that recently as well. And the husband married the wife. He had already had experiences. They got married like 23, 24. He'd already had experiences and she did not. And so instead of her expressing that to him, that she's had no sexual experiences, she just basically avoided sex because she didn't want to talk about it. So it would just be awkward as hell.
Yeah.
And he would want to talk to her about it, but she didn't want to talk about it.
That's what I'm saying. And I mean,
but I don't think that would have gotten to the place, because that would have been an easy fix. If she would have communicated, then that situation could have been different. Her sleeping around with other people.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, I think that, I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know. I feel like there should be some sort of sexual experiences, you don't have to be like somebody that's just out here sleeping with everybody. But, like if you had a relationship and, that's your girlfriend, if you're in a monogamous relationship for a period of time, sex should happen.
But we're not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying so you do not agree that should be saved for marriage?
I'm not a firm believer in that, no. I mean, does the idea sound great? Yes. But the reality of it is sex is also a big part of a marriage. And if you're struggling in that area, or someone hasn't had experience, or they're a little shy about themselves, or they're body conscious, and then they don't want to talk about it, that can put a strain on a marriage.
It can, but if you're open-minded, you can overcome those things if you're open-minded. So what Dondre was trying to say is that, people that advocate for, oh, well, you got to have all these experiences before you get married, or, you need to sample all of these things. He said when people, and you may disagree with this, I want to hear your opinion after I finish. He said that when people express that they had to leave a relationship because the sex was bad, he does not agree with that. He thinks that if you wait for marriage, or you wait for the right person, if you're starving, he referenced Eddie Murphy, if you're starving, you're going to eat that cracker. And you can be like, oh, this is a Ritz cracker. This is a good ass cracker. Like,
hey, these regular ass crackers.
Yeah, so he was like, you are going to revel in that experience because it's all you know.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you have all of these previous experiences, because he admitted that he actually put a lot of pressure on his wife to be like all these different experiences he's had in his past as a single man.
Now, I don't think you should have, like you said, like how Homeboy said he had a Rolodex. I don't think your number count should be that high, but I also don't think that you should feel obligated to say, okay, I've made this commitment that I'm just going to wait for, my spouse, and then, the person that you may have thought was going to be that, things change and you evolve and that doesn't happen. I feel like, I'm not a big fan of the whole one night stands or friends with benefits type of thing, but I think if you're in a monogamous relationship with a person, sex should happen. And,
But that's not what I'm talking about, babe.
Right. What you talking about?
We're focusing more on, do you feel that it is needed?
I would say yes. I would say yes.
So your stance is yes.
Human beings have a sexual appetite that needs to be fulfilled, and I just don't feel like that's the wave. Like that's so you be tense and all. Nah, man, nah.
Okay.
Go ahead and eat your cracker, even if it's prepackaged. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead and get your cracker.
I do agree with the sense of once you feel like you met someone that you really connect with, oftentimes you regret the people before. You're like, wow, like this is what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah, but if you didn't know that and you thought that the person you were going to be dealing with, now I'm not saying, be all willy-nilly. I also think in relationships that you should wait a while to really get to know a person before you sleep with them, because there's all kinds of things that can happen. But I'm saying if there's the time there and there's the connection there, because there's some people that don't believe in marriage as well.
Yeah, so you're just saying if you're in a committed relationship, things are going well, go for it.
Go ahead, get your cracker, young.
Okay, moving on. So when this episode airs, we will have a new elected president because it's election week. And this episode drops on Wednesday. Election day is Tuesday. So we won't be able to really discuss maybe the outcome until the next episode drops. So I just want to say this. I'm going to do the segment, Come Again.
Come again?
Come again?
Come again?
Say what?
Huh?
Huh?
What you say?
And this Come Again goes to anyone or every person who tweeted, put up a post, spread the word that your vote isn't important. That's kind of stopped me in my tracks and made me be like, huh? Because I understand that we don't feel heard. And I understand that, sometimes things go awry and things aren't counted properly. And, that the system, is not perfect whatsoever. However, that does not mean that we shouldn't try or that we should spread the message that it doesn't count. Because people like to say that the census doesn't count, but it does. It helps to allocate funds to your community. So by you not filling that out, they don't know how many people of a certain income bracket live there, how many diverse populations there are there, how many, just so many different things. And that's how your local governments determine what programs they create, what funds the government, from the funds that your federal government gets, that your state government gets from your federal. You don't understand how all of that works and how all that comes into play. And we're often told it doesn't matter, don't fill that out. That narrative is actually hurting us.
That's an ignorant response.
It is an ignorant response. So I kind of found an analogy, and Trev's an analogy guy. Mm-hmm. So it said, time to remember the best voting advice I ever heard. Voting isn't marriage. It's public transport. You are not waiting for the one who is absolutely perfect. You are getting on the bus. If there isn't one going to your exact destination, you don't stay home and sulk. No, you take the bus going closest to where you want to be. Mm-hmm. And that is how voting works, okay? It's not going to be perfect. You don't have to be, I'm not getting married to Joe Biden. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are just trying to choose someone who is following your path and your trajectory. And, even if I don't agree with how some people vote, or let me put it this way, I wouldn't vote the same way that they did. The fact that they got up and they voted, hey, what can I really do about that?
Yeah, it's effort, It's almost like the person, like you said, sitting at home, wanting things to change and talking about how they have figured it all out, but they still have not gotten up and done anything about it.
So as always, we encourage you to just think about, the decisions that you're making, the things that you are saying out of your mouth, how it affects those around you, how it affects the collective. What's your takeaway for today, Trev?
My takeaway is that, when I see you address my daughter and trying to raise her in the way that you think a young woman should be presented and represented as a black young woman, that I should just let you do that or walk out of the other room, So.
And I think I realized, or my takeaway is that even though your approach to rearing our son is different, yes, I should use my voice in talking about it, but I need to look at the bigger picture and what you're raising him for and what you're raising him to do. And, I need to respect that. And I think that's just really important, and kind of seeing that come from a different lens and out of different people's mouths just kind of solidified it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. You can follow us at I Now Pronounce You Pod on Instagram. Please follow, share the videos, comment, do all of the things. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, our Buzzsprout website, which is located in our I Now Pronounce You Pod on Instagram page. You can email us at inowpronounceyou.pod@gmail.com. And you now can follow us on Facebook at I Now Pronounce You Pod. Did I miss anything, honey?
Nope, you got it all covered.
Have a great week, guys.
Bye, guys. Stay safe.